Episode 63 of the Hard Truth About B2B eCommerce. I'm Timothy Peterson, and I'd just like to pause to give a word to our sponsors, and then I'm going to let Isaiah Bollinger take it away. Our first sponsor is Punchout2Go. Punchout2Go is a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce business platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. Punchout2Go's iPaaS technology seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. With their solution, you can immediately reduce integration complexities for Punchout catalogs, electronic purchase orders, invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents in order to accelerate business results. Balance is our other sponsor. Balance is a B2B e-commerce payment solution that works well for you and your buyers. It offers a seamless one-click checkout for almost any payment method, including ACH, wire, checks, cards, even terms. It's used by leaders in B2B e-commerce, and it's as easy as buying a shirt from Amazon. Check them out at getbalance.com, book a session, and tell them what your needs are. They are the first dedicated payment platform for B2B e-commerce, 100% tailored to your needs. Thanks again to our sponsor, Balance.
Yeah, definitely excited to be back for episode 63. We're in our snowstorm episode here in New England, but very excited to bring our latest guest, Kenneth Gray from Great Media. I think I'm saying that correct. Who's got quite a bit of expertise on the marketing, branding, media buying side in both B2B and B2C, and here to kind of share his experience with us. It's not snowing for you though, right? You're
no, the sun is shining here in Florida. It is a nice day out.
You are a lucky person. I've got over 6 inches of snow, and I had the snowblower out this morning for storm in New York. And so we're in New York, Massachusetts, and Florida.
I figured out the secret though. I used to hate the winter here, and now I picked up snowboarding. So now I'm like, we got some snow. The mountain's gonna be better. Like, sort of something to look forward to now that we'll probably have some good snow weather soon. But yeah, Kenneth, tell us a little bit about your background, how you started your own business, and then we'll kind of get into it. So
yeah, absolutely. I guess just for the record, I do like visiting the snow, but not more for a week. But I'm still a beach guy. But yeah, so my background, I really got into digital marketing, right out of school. I was lucky enough to get a role with the Golf Channel and NBC Sports. It kind of was a heavy data analytics and reporting, and then doing some SEO for their blogs and their YouTube channel. Obviously kind of entry level because kind of just dabbling into it, but that kind of led to a smaller role at a small agency where they let me become a media buyer. And I kind of caught on to that quickly because of the data piece of it and just overall, understanding the marketing flow. So really from there, I got more curious and I got a little bit more hungry. So I was like, I want to do the email for these clients. I want to do the SMS. I want to come up with like the strategy. Then it kind of led into like building websites, and then just kind of further kind of getting more curious and really digging into like the paid advertising piece of things, because really when you're trying to make a movement or any type of splash on the internet, it's like it's a huge traffic game, especially now because there's so many companies and businesses. So why are people coming to your site? How do you get them there? That's really ultimately businesses want conversions, and for conversions you're going to need to play the numbers game and get the traffic, and that's kind of where I help people.
And it's hard to do that organically, right? It can be done. I mean, we do a lot of that, but it's taken us 10 years to build up an SEO social presence. I mean, obviously over time we saw bigger and bigger benefits from it. But
yeah, absolutely. And the organic play you have to do, but that takes a little bit more time. It kind of they all kind of play with each other, right? Like an omnipresence approach. they say maybe 13 pieces of content, maybe 24 pieces of content before someone even decides to do business with you, whether it's like conscious or just, you're unaware, it might be passive, but yeah.
Let's talk about that, because I think that's where B2B companies are kind of failing. And shout out to Chris Walker, who I've seen been crushing it. I don't know if you've seen his podcast, or
Sure.
if you haven't, you should check him out. But he focuses more on B2B SaaS marketing, which really, in a lot of ways, B2B SaaS is B2B e-commerce, right? It's like buying sometimes it's automated, sometimes it's just sales rep, but usually you can go online and buy, right? But he talks about what is the dark social, and the B2B buying process is really no longer like, hey, sales rep, sell me. It's like, I talk to Tim, I talk to you, I see social media, I see this company pop up over and over. You recommend them, like all this organic flow of information. Maybe it's a couple ads, but like you said, it could be 10, 20 touch points that hit me in different ways. And then I'm like, oh crap, I should go buy from them. And the problem that he's getting at is, how do you attribute that? Was it the ad? Was it the organic post? You know what I mean? Like in the B2B space, I think a lot of companies are too caught up in, we have to attribute it to this one thing that we did, and that's what got us the sale. And that's just, as you just said, it's not one thing, it's 10 or 20.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like when you go shop at Target, you go there for toilet paper, you're leaving with, floss, a DiGiorno, waffles, some throw pillows. It's just not how people shop, even on the consumer level or the B2B level.
Especially my new wife, she'll be leaving with more than that, and then I have to.
I know, I was conservative.
But yeah, what I was going to add to that, because I think you can relate to this, Ken, is that really Kenny, I should say. Sorry, I almost said Ken.
All acceptable.
All acceptable. You could call me Tim or Timothy, but not Timmy, though. See, that's the confusion for me. It's like,
okay, that's
the one I leave out. But where I was going to go with that is, it really, when you're thinking about the B2C versus the B2B again, and we're always circling about how these things work, what people can learn, from one world or the other, or what's really just completely other. And if you're in the B2C world, I think everyone understands at this point that it's not one-to-one mapping in like marketing, it's one-to-many. There's so many different things that are happening at any given point. It's no longer like 25 years ago, before there was really e-commerce, where it was like the person going into the store, or the person reading a catalog and calling an 800 number. It's so many different factors that are out there, and B2B really needs to think about that much more aggressively now, because of how the world works. And it's not salesperson to sale, it is so many other factors in there, including social, as Isaiah was pointing out.
Yeah, so how do you approach that? Like, if let's say a B2B company comes to you, and what do you recommend for them? Because like you said, it's so many touch points. They can do one thing like Google Ads, but maybe they need to think more holistically about all these things, right? Or balance them. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a totally different approach. Sort of what Tim just said. People are more aware. We are dealing with different consumers, different buyers. And then when you go from B2C to B2B, that audience is much more finite. There's only so many decision makers who are actually looking for usually B2B sales are much larger. If you're just trying to sell like a t-shirt, that's 20, 25 bucks. Somebody could click an ad and, impulsively kind of just, pull the trigger and just like, it's not a big loss. But if you're a decision maker for your company and you're trying to bring in, a new software, it really needs to move the needle and, be useful, because you're spending a large amount of your capital just to make, whatever progress, whatever direction you're using, whether you're drop shipping, whether you're going for a sales approach, whether you're doing lead generation. But yeah, for us, when we're dealing with B2B advertising, I think it really comes down to, you really need to stick out what, point out what the KPIs are going to be for that company. And then on the paid advertising side, it's really a brand awareness play. You really want to be able to educate your potential consumers. And then at the same time, like you're saying, we need to have multiple touch points. So it's one of those things you need to go all in on. On Facebook, your decision makers probably aren't going to make like a decision right there, or book a call right away. but at least you can educate them on who you are, why you're credible. Maybe you can throw in like a free ebook, maybe a demo, whatever it might be, just a touch point to just say, hey, we're a real company. This is what we do, and this is how we can, improve your situation right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you, oh, go ahead, Isaiah.
I was just going to touch on just so people are clear, because sometimes KPIs can be very vague. What, give us an example of some of those KPIs, right? Like, I think
yeah, so I guess if we're going for like soft metrics, because I know we spoke about conversions and tracking before and how difficult it is right now. So sometimes you might just want to pay attention to your traffic and the cost, the click-through rate, how you're reaching, how people are reacting, and on the engagement level of whatever advertisements you're putting, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. So that'd be maybe your first approach, especially if you're just starting out, because you don't know what works and you can't really read the conversion as well anymore. And then after that, it's, once you get people to click on the page, you can use tools like Hotjar. How much of of your article are they reading? How much of the demo are they watching? Little bits of metrics like that. And then how many times are they clicking on your call to actions? Are they booking calls? And then what are your close rates? Because I think that's the biggest part on B2B. You're going for that big, business to business sale. And like I said before, they're usually much larger. So you kind of have to put all that into play compared to B2C, where your rates are a little bit more frequent, because it's just it's easier to deal with that level of consumers.
It's a faster conversion.
So related to,
yeah.
Go for it. Go for it. I think I'm just like a second delay behind you. Go for it.
It's a faster conversion in B2C, and B2B, it's like you have these multifaceted, figure out the engagement of the ads, then the engagement on the website, then the conversion. Like, there's many aspects to the quality of what's going on and tweaking that. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Tim. I'm just trying to kind of.
No, actually, I'll jump on what you just said and then go back to something else, because I'm really glad you brought that up. I was in another conversation recently about how B2B e-commerce really, it's not fair to say the conversion in the way it is for B2C. It's better to say like the layers of conversions, the multiple conversions, the phases of a conversion. And that's such a critical point.
I think that's a good point. Phase one, do they even know who you are?
Yeah, I mean, that's
yeah.
exactly. So that's, I'm so glad you brought that up. And I'll bring up another point. You could decide when to weave this in, but I wanted to get your opinion on kind of B2B marketplaces, because I'm working with a lot of people in B2B right now who, let's say they're wholesaling a whole variety of things, like a fashion wholesaler I know personally, and they're really going all in on the idea of the marketplace as opposed to doing anything else for their sales. Like, what do you think about B2B e-commerce marketplaces, and how this connects into the big picture?
Yeah, so obviously we've seen from all of the platforms, everyone's pushing their marketplace, even on these Shopify stores, it's like, move it from going from the checkout and move it from, checking out into the marketplace. Even on the lead generation side, it's they don't want you to push you to like a ClickFunnels or, your WordPress site. They'd rather keep it all in app and, control all of the data, which, some people are a little worried about. Instagram's huge. Yeah,
I was surprised to see how robust their store has gotten. Like, it's definitely a lot more transactional than I thought it was, like, not that long ago,
Oh yeah, and it is a nice ease of use, and I think we're going to see TikTok do that as well. The whole idea for these companies, they want to keep you on the platform. That's even when you create poor quality of ads, you get dinged for that because your bounce rate is high. So if people aren't really engaging with your content, you're going to end up, spending a lot more because you're just providing things that people don't want to see. You're kind of just irritating them. Just, cable TV commercials, people mute it because they don't want to see it. I don't care about the new Toyota truck. I know what it is,
Yeah. And I think that's a good point of the problem with B2B is that, I always laugh when I see like the IBM ads on like, some basketball game. They're like the hybrid cloud by IBM. And I'm like, who's watching this that is like a buyer, right? Like you said, it's a much more limited use. And I think that's the first step. Who's your buyer and where are they at, right? Like, is your buyer the CEO? And for us, we have, different types of buyers, right? Sometimes it's collective group on the Trellis side, right? But who is your buyer? And maybe it's the purchase person or whatever.
Well, I have an answer to that though, Isaiah. I'll tell you just one footnote to this. I know why they do that. One of the reasons is that the people who are the buyers spend so much money that they want to be involved with things like basketball. Because remember, I was working in sports sponsorship for a while. They want to be involved, and so those are perks for the people who are their top customers. And so they loop it back. So that's why like Chase and American Express sponsor US Open, right? I mean, it's not like everybody attending cares.
Well, there's a big difference because Chase is a universal application that everyone uses, but IBM Hybrid Cloud, it's like, I don't even know anyone that's bought that.
They give it to their customers though, to come back to the MBA, right? And so then the MBA requires that they pay for so much of a piece of that, right?
Yeah, maybe
so
the
it's
MBA
a big circle.
The MBA is using the hybrid cloud, right? I guess
that's essentially what happens, and then they get the suites, for the all the VIPs to come watch a game.
My point
that's
is,
what happens.
I think there's B2B companies, large and small companies, putting effort into these. They're throwing it out there, but is that really where their buyers at? Where they probably should be spending more money on LinkedIn or these network groups of. I was having a hard time getting a partner to invest in this very effective targeted B2B organization of a few thousand key people that use an ERP, solid distributors, very classic B2B, but they just can't understand it because they're like, oh, we only attributed one sale to that. But they don't realize it's like by being there, those thousands of people will see them over every year, over and over and over. And those sales could take years. We've had sales that have taken 3 years in that market, right? But it ended up being $500,000 for us. And they're just so short-sighted on, what did you do for me lately on the attribution of this?
Yeah, I think you're saying it perfectly, because I think some of these smaller businesses are actually, they're paying too much of, the day-to-day metrics where they have to see big picture where, like you said, Chase is a universal company, but it was like the chicken and the egg thing. Was it because they started running TV ads, they're hosting bowl games, they're running ads on, every platform possible. Before you know it, everybody just knows what Chase is and everybody uses it. And it's like, I guess I'm a Chase customer because they, dominated the space and they're clearly, the bank.
Yeah, exactly. But how do you get there, right? Like no one starts there, right? And it's like, you have to be smart about those initial dollars when you only have, a fraction of that to spend.
Oh, exactly. And I think that's where digital marketing comes into play, because a lot of it's just free. It's just, you need to put in the effort. You need to pay the certain experts because, you might want a really great copywriter with some SEO skills for your blogs. You might want to hire a team to put together the correct demo, the educational content. So I think you still have to go the omnipresence approach. You're not going to be buying commercials during the Super Bowl during year one, but you got to go for the low hanging fruit because anybody can run ads on all of these networks. So just get that piece dialed in and slowly build from there.
So talking about slow build, how do you approach like a very young business? I think that's something that's also been interesting hearing those responses. So I'm starting out, I'm a B2B company with either a service or a product, but I'm really young. Like if I'm a really young business, what
no
are
one
the
knows
first
who you
things?
are. Yeah,
right?
No one really knows who you are yet.
Exactly. Nobody knows. It could be the greatest idea or whatever, or the greatest product, but nobody really knows. So how do you just take those first few steps if somebody's approaching you as a client?
Yeah, for every business, brand, client that I've worked with, the ones that have done really well, and then compared to the ones that are, maybe just scraping by, because we all know there's companies out there like, hey, I have an idea, let's run it. And then there's like brands who are, they're a force in the space. For most marketing, I think the answers are always more simple than complicated. It's all the low-hanging fruit. So you want to build brand awareness, you want to educate your potential clients or your potential users, and then you want to build credibility. So, get your brand really dialed in and then plan out your funnel. And I don't mean that in like page to page, but how are you going to reach on the brand awareness or top of the funnel? Illustrate who you are, what sets you apart, and what solution are you providing? And then when you're educating, that's as simple as blogs of whether it be industry news, whether it be company news, or you're just providing like a quick webinar in whatever niche or industry that you're in, and then just building the trustworthy and credibility for your company. I mean, over time, it's going to take time to build trust, get testimonials, illustrate all those awards. So most people are paying attention too much to like the day-to-day or even weekly metrics, where you need to think big picture and give it time.
Yeah, monthly or yearly, and yeah, weekly is just not enough data. More holistically, long term on the. And so I think the key really is, like you said, that omnipresence, omnichannel, multi-channel, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
I think omnichannel is one of the buzzwords these days. Is that approach, and just for anecdotally, I think what's worked really well at Trellis is, I focused a lot on LinkedIn. I felt like LinkedIn was a good place for us. I built up a little bit on Twitter. Twitter's a little bit harder for us just because we don't have quite the talent and time, but there's some things there. YouTube, we've done some stuff with Google. Obviously SEO is a big focus of ours. And then just general social media. We have a little bit of a presence on Instagram and some of the other platforms. And we've spread ourselves around. We have partnerships. Like it's like getting yourself out into all these niches, right? And some are bigger than others. And I think this applies to both a legacy B2B company and new B2B companies, because legacy B2B companies generally don't have a good presence. So it's almost like they're a new company in the digital world, right? So do you think they need to kind of think about their users and their personas and where they live? Some of these people are going to live.
Oh, yeah.
Some are going to be on Twitter, but that's the thing. It's like they're everywhere, right? And people are on Twitter. I'm still not on TikTok. I just haven't, but I know it's a huge market. I'm just like, I'm just not ready for it, right? Like, and maybe that's just me being lazy and I'm not reaching people I should be reaching, right? But you got to kind of like pick your battles, right? Like, I don't have the budget and the media ability to be everywhere like Gary Vee right now, or, I'm also not willing to work 100 hours a week. So that might be part of it too.
That's reasonable. That's realistic. I don't think we always know what's going on behind the curtain for some of these guys. I'm just like, there's no way you're working that much.
That's what I think. I'm like, how is this guy surviving, right? Like, how does he not look like he's about to die if I worked 100 hours a week for the rest of my life? Like, I would not.
He does in person. He does. He really does. He really looks tired. So
yeah, I value my sleep and my free time too much. But so, yeah,
right.
Getting back to the question, how would you go about kind of balancing that? Because that's where I think also people struggle is they post on Twitter, they do like a little bit of everything, and it doesn't really do much because they kind of give up, right? Because you're not going to see a lot of results if you do post, one tweet a month, right? Like, it's just not going to do much, right?
Yeah. So, it really comes down to plan the work and work the plan. You don't need to see the end result. You don't need to see, what's going to happen in 2 years. You just got to see what your next step is and then just start that. Because I think as you guys have grown your agency and your brands, and then I'm kind of working on that right now, you can get overwhelmed really easily to the point where you're almost in like decision paralysis, where you're like, I don't even know what to do and I'm going to get nothing done. So, if you can focus in one part, own that space. If might be LinkedIn marketing, that might be the low hanging fruit because people are responding there and there's decision makers there. So kind of get that dialed in and then start dabbling into Google because it's the biggest network. Everybody's on there. And when people are looking up, that's what people are, their search queries are just like, how do I start my apparel business? And that's when you want to pop up. So I think, most people just have to start from one step at a time. And then there's people who are maybe lucky, maybe they sold a giant wine company and they have the capital to hire a 30-person team where I'm going to go hire a Google expert, a Facebook expert, and then I'm going to get a WordPress expert. So it's just different situations for everyone, but you just have to start taking those next steps because, done's better than perfect most times.
Yeah, and just basically start building the channels, right? Pick a couple channels, LinkedIn, and then I think that you said it perfectly. Build a couple channels that usually it's not that complicated, right? Probably going to be LinkedIn, probably going to be Google, YouTube, I think is underrated, you know, a couple of these things. And then you just keep spreading, right? Like now we got, you know, Tim, we've been building this podcast. We're on Spotify, right? Like that's technically a channel for us, right? Like
Yeah,
Apple
exactly
Podcasts is not, it's a smaller channel for us, but like it's, you know, we've broadened our ability. And I think as you build up, you know, you can do more because you have all this content that you kind of spread out. And that's the hard part. Yeah.
It becomes interesting, and you know, again, I'm interested in your viewpoint, Kenneth. I mean, on this, because you know, we know people search for us on iTunes and Spotify to a degree, right? But then when's the point that you decide, well, I need to really think about what else I can do, you know, there, as opposed to doing it somewhere else, you know, for the same content, right? It's an interesting, you know, question for B2B, because there are a lot of people who are doing not necessarily just podcasts, but creating content. Well, where do you get the biggest bang based on the placement versus the ad dollars versus, you know, whatever for that content that you're creating?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a tough question. And I think almost every brand, you know, small and large, they're kind of dealing with that same, you know, question. And I don't think there is just one, you know, perfect point like, hey, we're seeing this many users here. Now it's time to jump over there. I think once you get comfortable in one platform and you kind of have it automated almost, or where you can even hand it off to someone more junior, where it's just like, this is what I've done over the last 12 months. This is kind of my schedule. Here, you kind of carry that one out. Then you go and bring some of those similar, you know, metrics that, or, you know, any observations and start bringing those into those other channels. And you basically rinse and repeat. For most companies, I think you really have to test almost every channel. You can get a good idea. Like you said, LinkedIn might be a, you know, low-hanging fruit for a lot of B2B, but you don't know until you, as we call it in media buying sometimes, you're just buying data sometimes, just, you know, testing the waters. Just what are the click-through rates like, or how like all the videos I'm putting up, how much, like how long are they watching? How many views am I getting? Am I showing up in a lot of search results? And all those tools are out there. A lot of them are free anyways. So it's just, you kind of have to be decisive about it, do your own research, and then start kind of testing out these other channels and just kind of see what kind of response you get back. It's almost, you got to go old school, right? Like, I'm going to put forth this campaign for the next 30 days, observe the results, and then, you know, cut it off and then kind of see what happens, just especially with the tracking issues.
So just one quick follow-up on that. And then really one of the things that I've observed, and I was talking again with you know, a business associate of mine about this, is that there's been a reluctance for some B2B players to be as like transparent and open about process and the founders and how the factory looks, or, you know, whatever, as opposed to people who are B2C, where the consumers have demanded that, right? In B2C, consumers want to see everything now, right? They want to know everything, where to come from, where's it going, what's the impact, whatever. In B2B, they've been a little like, oh, I don't know, how much do I tell them, how much don't I tell?
I mean, yeah, B2B
so what do
is
you
still
think?
a very behind the scenes, but I think that we will have to catch up to the transparency in B2C. I think that you know, I know this is, you're asking Kenneth, but I think that time is time is limited on that.
I agree.
No,
I agree with you. I do.
Yeah, I agree. I think people are, you know, they want to know how things are being ran, especially, you know, if anything falls through the crack. I mean, even sometimes if you're flying with an airline, you're like, what's going on back there? It's you know, you got C-level executives making tens of millions of dollars. It's like, why can't I get an extra couple inches on this seat or something as silly as that? But
yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. People want transparency. And I think that to think that, oh, we can just kind of skate by because we're B2B, I just don't see that as a sustainable strategy for too much longer, right? I mean,
no,
everything's getting online, it becomes more transparent. These kind of closed door B2B things are just, because the problem is, as soon as the gates get opened by one company in the space, then it's going to force everyone else to do it. And there's an advantage of being the first mover, right? Like if you become the more transparent B2B company in your space, you could gain a lot of business from that, right? So I think that's
yeah, exactly what you're saying. I think it might even be a benefit to some companies because, like you're saying, people want to know how everything's kind of being operated and those processes or your SOPs are. Even if you know, you have your company set up, and then I've seen it a lot with a great deal of like dozens of companies where, you know, everything's made in the USA, or this one is ran in the USA, or you know, I hate to say it, but how great is it when you have to call like AT&T or a call center, and you know when it's somebody that you can relate to, and then it might be somebody that is outsourced, and you know they don't always understand the situation. There's not the same empathy there, and you just get like a different conversation. It's basically your customer. Yeah, that experience with your customer, it just makes a huge difference, I think.
Well, and from the B2B perspective, I mean, for example, the sweater I'm wearing, I don't think Isaiah has seen it before, but I use this as an example actually in some other conversations I've been in. It's made of ocean waste plastic, and it looks like wool and it feels like wool and whatever, but it's made of ocean waste plastic. But the companies that make this particular fiber to sell to, you know, apparel makers, they're trying to be completely transparent because it's to their benefit. It's like, here's the problem, here's our solution, here's why it's like wool, here's why it's better than wool, all these sorts of things. But then companies that are kind of picking it up are like, well, you know, how much do we tell people about this? Do we just say it's a new approach and we've renamed it, you know, new wool, right? And a lot of these, and that's real. I'm not even making that up. There are companies that are like, what do I do with this? How do I deal with my consumer? But the consumer already demands this kind of stuff, right? That's why it's happening to begin with. So the quicker, I'm with you, Kenneth, I think the quicker that this happens, where people just kind of open the door in B2B and say, well, you know, what are we hiding? You know, or let's fix things so that we can actually be transparent.
Well,
right?
I think I want to change gears a little bit, because I think for a lot of B2B companies, the reason they struggle with this, some it's more obvious, right? It's like, we sell this SaaS thing that does this thing, and we create content because it does this thing, and it's pretty easy to explain. But I think the problem in B2B, especially for both old and new companies, is they might make something like, they make the raw materials of that wool or whatever, they sell that. Where do you even start to, like, it's one thing, we're talking about channels, but where do they even create? Do they create an image? Do they create a message? Do they create a video? Like, that's where I think these B2B companies struggle, is what's the content behind all this marketing? And how do you build your brand if you're not like some cool, most of these things, frankly, aren't some cool, flashy thing, right? Like, they're not selling this like cool, you know, car or shoe, you know what I mean? That's a big problem, I think, of B2B. And so they're like, well, no one cares about our content, or we don't know what to write, so they just don't do much, and then they get kind of stuck in the old, like, all right, we're just going to sell person to person.
So I think that just comes back to when, you know, these business owners are overthinking. Like, you don't need the whole market, you don't need everybody interested in you, you really just need a little sliver of that pie. So you need to identify who your target is, or your end user, and then just kind of shape your branding and your messaging around, you know, what would that person think? What is that person searching for on Google? What, you know, what help do they actually need? So it's really about the quality of content. You don't want to, you know, do broad strokes. You want to be kind of hyper focused on who those decision makers are, and like, you know, solving their, you know, their problem with your solution that you can provide.
So I'm going to throw something else at you, because I get in these conversations. So brace yourself. All right. How about
I'll try.
Yeah. How about you know, gamification and the metaverse for B2B, right? So people talk about this stuff a lot. It's like, you know, if you talk about crypto and you're tired of that, now you're talking about NFTs and you get tired of that. Now it's the metaverse, right? So people are talking about having this virtual space in which you can transact. Is there, like, what do you think of this? What do you make of it? Like, when will we do this?
Yeah, it definitely seems like the early stages of it. I think it'll come more into play, you know, over the years, because I think the Oculus app, that was like the most downloaded thing over the holiday, meaning like everybody got VR or some type of AR. So I think as those worlds kind of build, you know, experiences are going to happen, and, you know, time will go by, and then those companies will start to pivot. And, you know, I hate to drop like the Ready Player One reference, but Yeah, I think that's definitely, some foreshadowing, because I mean,
agree.
I like games as well. It looks great. It looks awesome. If we could do that.
Here's
Like
a
we could be in
connected
a
piece.
room together instead of like
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
I like that.
Right.
I like it. So a connected piece though is the NFT piece, because I've had legitimate conversations with B2B players saying, well, we have all this content, or we have all of this, image, all these images, or we have audio files, or we have music files, or whatever. Can we do something with that in the NFT world? What do you think? Is there anything there to that?
Yeah, when you're thinking about these art pieces or music or anything like that, and you own the digital rights, it's the same idea as like a limited release record coming out in the real world. It definitely is used differently, it's carried differently, but there's going to be these digital assets that are only beneficial maybe in this digital space, and there's only going to be so many created at a time. It's even like what kids are doing with skins on video games now. Like, you can buy certain skins, so your character looks a different way, you get certain tools, but everybody can buy it. So the NFTs, kind of what I'm seeing now, is it's limited. You can only get this batch. It's kind of like a limited drop of music or shoes in the real world, but now in the digital space, if we do have like a big gaming burst, they release some digital Nikes. I don't know why people buy the skins on the video games and all that, but people do. So in-app purchases are how a lot of people make, a lot of these companies make their money. So if you have a unique piece in these games, why not?
The best explanation I saw on Twitter was, you can tell I spend way too much time on Twitter, is that the Metaverse is not a place, it's a time. And
Yeah.
what he's saying is it's a time in which we eventually, as a society and a world, spend so much time online and in AR, VR, digital, just generally digital, that now buying NFTs is more valuable because I spend all my time on digital, so I want to look cool on digital. Whereas buying physical shoes isn't as important because more of my
time like to go out.
Yeah, more of your time is spent on digital. So
Yep.
the idea was that, as we become more digitized, the digital ecosystem, digital economy becomes more important in some ways than the physical economy, which is an interesting thought. And the point is, it's a time and place which all of a sudden will be there. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 30 years. We just don't, no one can really say when that point in time is, or it's like, well, we're kind of here. And all the cool kids are just like buying all their stuff like NFTs, and no one buys shoes anymore. Everyone buys the same pair of shoes now, right? Like, I don't know, I'm just being like a really exaggerating. Honestly, it's not gonna be like that, but I think like you really made it super simple. It's honestly kind of what you're saying is just that, and I like to drive these points home because I think basically people are overthinking B2B marketing, right? It's like, just come up with some simple messaging, whatever you make, whatever you do, what's around that, what's interesting around that, come up with some content around that. Could be a blog post, a video, whatever it is, and start promoting that messaging and tweaking it and just basically creating, and it can be very specific because you don't need to attract, 1 million people in B2B. You might only need to attract 100 people in B2B to be successful, right? Or to get a couple sales.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly what you're saying, and just be consistent with it, and give it time. Especially when you're dealing with higher price points, you're dealing with larger contracts. Those take time. Like we said before, a T-shirt, sure, we can sell that in one day, but we're talking about a $50,000, software. It's going to take time, a few touch points, some educating, some credibility, maybe a couple conversations. Well, like you said, if you only need 100 of those contracts that, it's a recurring revenue every year, then that kind of pencils.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, people don't realize in B2B, if you have 100 sales can be massive, right? Like 100 customers in B2B could be, huge for a lot of businesses. And let's do the math. Let's say you convert 1 of 10 leads. That means you only need to get 1,000 people to, contact you or seriously consider you to hit that 100, right? Which is much
exactly.
less overwhelming than like, I need to get 1 million people on Facebook to follow me. You know what I mean? It's like, we're talking about numbers that aren't that crazy, right? But it's those.
No,
numbers,
you're absolutely right, because there's a SaaS company I was working with, and their solution is relatively expensive, not crazy, but it's $2,750 a month, I think. You know,
like 30 grand a year. Yeah, so
right?
30
You know,
grand.
so it's not like the biggest thing in the universe, but it's big. But
Yeah,
you know, 100
so
people is
enterprise.
275,000 a month, right? You know, it's like
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it adds up.
That's a lot. So can I ask you just a piece you'd mentioned? We were talking about video. You know, I wanted, for our listeners, I want to see if we can just zoom in a little bit on this for a second. You know, people are making more video than ever before. B2B, I think, is still, again, not sure what requires video and what doesn't. It's like interview with the CEO, sure, but how much educational material, how much back, you know, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about what you reveal versus what you don't. So just like, again, if I'm approaching you as an agency and I'm a B2B player, talk about video and what you feel is like the right level of importance, or where to begin with that.
Yeah, so for video, it really depends on what platform you're on. I like to pay attention, you know, what statistics are they, or metric modeling are they following? Like, for example, on Facebook, Instagram, you know, one of the first metrics that'll pop up is how many 3-second views did you get? That's because on that platform, people's attention spans are pretty short and they're just swiping. So, you know, you got to capture their attentions in that 3 seconds. And then, you know, and on top of that, you have to entertain them as well.
Crazy that you're like, oh, we made it to 3 seconds. You know, we should be proud that they didn't pass us by at 1 second, but we got 3 seconds, you know.
Yeah, right. And then when you start getting into the creative piece, you realize how long like 5 seconds can be and how much you can work into your image. And, you know, even if it's a GIF or just like an animated image or whatever video you might be playing, you know, those 3 seconds, like you can tell, because you got to test yourself, like swipe on wherever platform you're on, and then just, you know, see how long it takes you to take in that information until you're just, oh, next.
Sometimes
but then
seconds, right? It's not even a full second on some of these things, right?
Oh yeah. Some people just already, you know, like we're such different consumers now, and everyone's so used to the internet. You can already tell sort of what's going on as you like glance. Your brain hasn't even taken in the full image. You can tell if it's going to be a meme, if it's like a car commercial, or, you know, if it's you know, something that looks a little bit more native, and you're like, oh, let me give it a couple more seconds. So it really depends there. Like maybe LinkedIn, maybe YouTube, you can get away with longer, because people are expecting to watch longer material, become more educated. That's what they're going there for. Yeah. If you're swiping on Instagram, it's just swipe. So it really depends on what channel you're on. Yeah. But yeah, I think the educational piece and just providing that value, you get to build trust, you get to provide some value to your potential clients, and then you kind of can illustrate that, like, you know, I'm an expert in this space. Like, yeah, you can try and repeat it, but you know, for me, it's like I've been in dozens of ad accounts. I can show you everything that I've done, but you don't know how to interpret the data how I can, because I've spent X amount of money and I've seen so many different niches and just scenarios play out. So it's just, it's just establishing yourself as an authority in that space, but also providing some value.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to like, as a consumer of B2B, I'm just going to focus on that. I tend to like the opportunity to have longer form videos after getting hooked on something, right? So I'll see, oh, that's interesting, and then I'll go search a company and see if I can find more, and if they have a YouTube channel or whatever. So that's sort of the way that I consume, you know, content for when I'm trying to figure out, like, all right, I need this new tool, you know, or I need, you know, something to happen. How do I learn about it, right? And so I'll even look at the videos of people I know I'm not going to work with to learn to go back to the people I will, right? It's that kind of weird. I mean, but it happens, like, well, there's no other video in X, right? And I'll go find a video and I'll watch it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to work with them, but let me see if I can talk to these people about what those said in their video. It's fascinating how that works today, right?
I would love to, you know, we're getting towards the end of the time here, but I think what would be really valuable for people listening is, can you give us like a story or two of just something that maybe you took your time and it worked well in B2B, just kind of anecdotally, and I know maybe it's specific to that industry, but I think those stories help people because it's like, oh wow, this person did this, and then over time they did that, and it actually worked, and they got some better leads, or you know, do you have any kind of like
absolutely sort of kind
stories
of
and obviously not the t-shirt, more on the B2B. You know?
yeah. So for kind of like the client I was speaking about earlier in our conversation, we were kind of looking for leads for people who potentially wanted to open up a franchise. So we were looking for other entrepreneurs, people who are investing. So this was kind of a different one, especially on social media. So that's kind of where I was kind of hammering in. You need to get
not
your
the average
branding in.
person, not the average person.
Yeah.
The average person cannot afford a franchise, right?
And this was also just specific locations. So we're looking for not the average person and just the average pool of users that are on, these platforms. And now we're making it even more finite by doing, performing some geofencing where we're like, but they have to be in this area for it to make sense.
But just for perspective, a lot of these franchises, what are 50, 100,000 to get started, sometimes even more?
So basically at least 100,000 to get going.
Yeah. So not the average person with 100,000 laying around to build a franchise. So
right.
So, sorry, I just want to.
No, just kind of hammer that part in. Yeah, it's $100,000 purchase. We're not talking about a AOV of $20. So there's not that many people, like you said, just with that cash, or who can even get that capital just to like roll the dice on a franchise.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one where I had to do heavy testing with our creative and with our headline, because creative's king, then it's headline, then it's your body copy. That's kind of the order people pay attention and kind of dive into your content. So we really had to do
that again. Testing. Can you say that again?
Creative.
Oh, so yeah, creative headline is king. Then we want to look at headlines, and then your primary or your body copy. That's the order people are going to take in this information and kind of consume it. And if you pique their interest with your creative, then what's the headline? Okay, I'll read through the body a little bit more, and then you're going to get a link click to get to your website, or a sign up form, whatever it might be. So that's when
creative, just to make a joke, the creative in front of is a guy with holding money in front of a McDonald's, right? Is that gonna?
I mean, for McDonald's, once you reach a certain level, that might work. It's just, do you want easy money?
I'm just kidding. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that'd probably work out great, honestly. You'd be surprised. So yeah, just because with your limited targeting, so you might be just targeting just like a couple zip codes. So then you just need to hammer in your headlines. That comes back to, what does your end user, what's going on through their head, what might kind of pique their interest. So you're going through multiple different angles of, profits, autonomy, opening, being your own boss, things like that. So you're testing all these different angles to see what's getting people to click. And then using UTM parameters, you can kind of throw that in there, kind of see what the traffic is, and then kind of see what the sales process looks like, getting them on the phone, the close rate, the process afterwards. And then same thing with conversion rate optimization. First, we would just have people schedule calls. Then we realized we were getting a lot of unqualified leads. So then we kind of put in like a survey to pre-vet them, pretty much like, are you making this much? Are you interested in investing this much time? Can you do this? Do you live in this area? So
what was a qualified lead, like making 200,000 a year? What was the?
Yeah, it was I think it was around $80,000 to $120,000 of capital. So you could even have it financed, but you had to already have it, set up with like your bank or a lender. I think the company we were working with was actually trying to start a partnership with a bank so they could kind of, fast track that process. If somebody was interested,
you need to have a down payment and certain.
Right. A credit score. You basically had to, qualify, just your normal financial metrics there.
Basically, like you need to be able to qualify for a mortgage, basically.
Yeah, same idea. Yeah, so it would just be different questions we'd keep adding. Obviously, the lead rate and the ability to schedule a call would diminish a little bit, but then the quality leads that were coming in were much more qualified. Then, our salesperson was going through, 10, 20 calls a day to maybe only 3 or 4, but one of the 4 usually closed. So that's better than wasting your time on 10 or 20 calls.
So what was that was a great explanation of how it's better, you know, it saves time qualifying people on the website with a survey. And we've done stuff like that, like what's your budget? And we put even like numbers in the budget, and it kind of, when they see these numbers, I think it disqualifies people because our numbers aren't not that low. So it's like, you know, we're not looking for $5,000 website clients, right? It's like the minimum I think on our drop down is like 25,000 or something like that. I forget what it is, but so what was some of the headlines of the messaging that resonated the most? Is just out of curiosity. Was it autonomy or was it
again, it was the most simple ones. It was just like, you know, looking to be your own boss, you know, create your own wealth, your own future. It was just little things like that that would just pique the interest of some people, and maybe just get the messaging to people who, because you know, big entrepreneurs, they already know about franchises. They know how to go about it. So it's more so those people on the fringe who are like, well, I have the means to do it. Should I do it? And, you know, you just kind of pique their interest a little bit. And then we maybe follow up with a retargeting and like, see if you qualify. So then it's just kind of like, are you even good enough to work with us? And then it's just like, all right, let me see if I can, you know, work with them and then see what the benefits are. And then it gives the company the opportunity to just be, you know, these are our numbers. These are what you could look at, you know, if you were to invest. So, you know, we'll see if it works out.
I like that. See if you qualify. It's like, ooh, like maybe I'm like good enough to qualify. You know,
right.
What's interesting, the approach that you described is that it parallels how luxury works in B2C. It's almost identical because, you know, luxury goods, you almost never appeal first to like, here's everything it does. You say, change your life, you know, it's like you're living this new dream. It's the most exciting. So luxury almost always, in my experience, you start with the emotion and the passion, and then you say, here are the things that it does, or you might, you know, want to know, or maybe not, right? And then you go to the next step.
You know, we talk about the merging of B2B and B2C. I think where I see that intersection coming is the high ticket B2C items.
Yep.
And the high and B2B, they're becoming more similar, right? If I buy a $40,000 car,
the same,
and I buy a $40,000 software, like those processes could become more and more similar, right? You know, whether it's a consumer or B2B.
Well, I mean, I can't say the name of the company right now, but there's another company that did something. It was all about time, right? And so they were like, you don't have the time because you live an exciting life. But, you know, it was basically just a tech, you know, that was involved in project planning or whatever, but they had, the winning thing was all about time. It wasn't about like the details of what it actually did. So
yeah,
I thought that was
work. Like, you're too important to waste your time on this, so buy our software.
That was it.
Or buy our
that
product.
was exactly
yeah,
it.
Exactly. Like you're the CEO. You don't need to waste your time on this.
You're too important, I say.
Yeah.
You can't waste that time. Yeah.
Little ego play, but it works.
I mean, I think a lot of the marketing in these ego plays works, right? Like, I mean, especially in luxury, like you said, I mean, most of the time, why are you buying luxury goods? It's kind of an ego play, right? Like it's not usually for function, right? Like, I mean, sometimes
not usually. It's like the second or third step. I mean, really, and there's a lot of data to support that now. It's almost never the first step. It's almost never. It's number one is like
I'll
appeal
give you
to
my
the emotion.
cheap example. You know, I was looking at Lululemon for kind of like the athleisure stuff because I'm you know, I want like more comfortable pants that look reasonable for work or something like that. But they're so expensive, right? And they have like no discounts. So then I realized Under Armour has very similar styles, almost the same, and they had some discounts, and it was like half the price with some of the discounts I was able to get. And I'm like, I don't care that it's Under Armour. Like from my perspective, I was going with the functional. But some people might be like, oh, I need the Lululemon version, you know, the slightly better version, twice the money, right? But I went functional, right? Some people I think are going to go with the more functional. Well, I don't care about the luxury status of the.
Right. Well, you know the company Rhone, RHONE, that makes a lot of menswear that's functional, high quality. That's their marketing right now. It's like they show a picture of something that is very expensive by another brand. They say us half off, you know. And it's like, it's really funny. That's exactly what.
How do you spell them? I'm gonna look.
Rhone, RHONE. They started with like really good menswear that was like athleisure work stuff. Actually, they have an office in Stamford, Connecticut, near where the Trellis office is in Stamford.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I know this one.
I'm convinced we're moving in that direction. Like, I think the suits are going away. Like, we're kind of, now with coronavirus, it's like just comfortable, but don't look too bad,
Yeah, don't look too bad is the new dress code. That's it. Don't look too bad.
That's a good slogan. We're gonna have to start our own thing with that one.
I like that. I could live with that. That's
look
good.
presentable, right? Look presentable or don't look too bad. Those are my two, clothing slogans. But
Kenneth, we should give you, the last word as we get close to wrapping up. So just make sure that all of our listeners know exactly what your company does, who you're focused on, all this sort of great stuff too, so that there's a good punchline here for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach us at greatmedia.com. So as we kind of laughed at before, it's a pun on my last name. So it's like the color. So GRAYT media.com. It's a tough one.
Not too bad.
I like it.
Greatmedia.com, right? It's better than our old name.
I guess once you learn how to say it, how it's spelled, then it kind of hammers it more, and it's like, oh, it's Great Media. That's how you spell it. There's a few brands who've done it. I don't know if we'll make it do. No. But yeah, for us, just we're experts in getting the right users to your website to make actionable steps. That's like the short of it. Whatever platform you're trying to be on, we can specialize there. We can kind of get your messaging out. We can reach the right users. And then we also have a huge play in the strategy behind the conversion rate optimization. What happens after the click? Because whatever efforts you're putting forth, the user experience is huge now. People are so familiar with shopping and interacting online. So if you don't present yourself in the right light, you have no chance to compete. So if you go to our website, we have a button. You can set up a call with me, and I offer free 30-minute calls just to help out. Sometimes it leads to coaching, sometimes it leads to us running stuff for you, but overall, every call that I usually have scheduled, I help that business out, and we can actually move the needle in that 30-minute to hour-long conversation, and I think that's what we're really here for.
I love just get started, right? Keep it simple, get started, do something, right, with this digital media.
Oh yeah, it's not going anywhere.
It's accelerating. I mean, with Omicron, I think we're going to be permanently changed. I saw a thing on LinkedIn. It was like 3 options, and one of them was like in person. And it was like 10% of people that polled wanted to stay in person, and everything else was either hybrid or remote. Like, we're just, the old way is we're just not going back.
Well, I'll tell you one last thing on that. I agree with you on this. I don't think we're going back. I mean, I know a barber who is a traditional barber who went through the whole transition to do like online appointments and all this sort of stuff. That barber is now trying to figure out how to do home visits to do people's haircuts after COVID passes.
There's an app.
Like, you know what?
I know someone that developed an app for that. It's I want to say it's called Shortcut. It's like the Uber for haircuts.
Oh,
I think I've heard the same one, but I get it. I mean, based traditional, then all of a sudden this huge, different thing going on, transition, and now that's what he's thinking, right?
It's true.
Different
Everything is changing. Thank you so much, Kenneth. This was great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a great time. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.